No, but since you work at Facebook, I was wondering, what does a day for you at Facebook typically look like? What, as much as you're comfortable with talking about this, what are your tasks? What is your job role? And yeah, what do you basically do all day?
Yeah, so I think that Facebook and these other big companies are inherent, like by definition, they're big, right? And so depending on what part of the company you are, what part of the stack you work on, your day will look quite different. But I can share, an example day on my end as one data point. And I think I'll mention that I guess I'm a little bit unique in the sense that I have this job, but I also do a lot of stuff on the side, like YouTube and teaching. But for me, I think a normal day, so the team that I work on is about empowering other developers in the company to be able to build faster and build better, higher quality products. So it's basically a developer infrastructure role, which is a little bit different or quite different from a product developer role. And so in any given day, I'll typically have at least 1 or 2 meetings where I talk to product teams about what are the needs that they have, what are the concerns they have with using the infrastructure that my team develops, and how can I help them or unblock them, either immediately in like tactical value or maybe in terms of road mapping. Like a lot of the time is spent in how can we set up our team and their team for success in the next 6 months or 9 months or whatever. And then of course, as a software engineer, a lot of the time it's also going to be spent coding, and maybe not coding, but I would say more accurately reading code or debugging. So it's not necessarily always writing code, but a lot of it will be spent in, there's a bug you're chasing down, and oftentimes you're going to be reading tons and tons of code, and the actual code change you make will end up being a couple lines, which solves the problem. But to get there, you have to read thousands of lines of code, right? That's a pretty common occurrence, I think, at a big tech company. And so, yeah, I would say like team meetings, a lot of time spent debugging, reading or writing code. And then, of course, there's also a lot of like one-on-ones with people on the team where you talk about, what are they working on? How can you help? Career growth, things like that.
The name of your role you have there is lead developer, right? That's how it's called.
Technically, I if you look at the actual like employment system, I don't think there is a name attached to the role. But if you look at the level, I guess you could call it a staff engineer. So if you look at the equivalent level at other companies, it would be called a staff engineer.
Okay, I think this was actually the word I read earlier, not lead developer, staff engineer. Yeah, this was something I was going to ask later, how much time you actually spend in meetings and how much time you actually spend writing code, but you already explained this. Then I can also add another question to this. How many hours would you say do you work per week overall?
Yeah, I feel like it depends quite a bit. I think one of the good things about this big tech company is that, it's not going to come crashing down. Like there's some amount of stability. I have a pretty high degree of confidence that my role or the company will still be around. And so there are some weeks where I'm actually quite busy and there's a deadline coming up, especially like, for example, holiday time. November, December are the biggest months for these ad-driven companies. And so you need to make sure that everything is landed and stable by October or early November. Yeah, I think it depends on when we're talking about. Like one of the things about these big companies is that it is very bursty in the sense that you might have a SEV. A SEV is what we call internally like a big issue with the site or the mobile app. Like something is crashing for a large number of people. And of course, if you have a SEV going on, then you have to jump on it no matter what time of day it is. And also, if you are preparing for the holiday season code freeze, like November and December are the critical months for these ad-driven companies. And so the months of September, October are quite busy. But there are also times when things are a little bit lighter. And I would say like, on a good week where there's not as much in terms of commitments, and maybe it's like 40, 45 hours. But on a busy week, it could easily turn into 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah, this reminds me of something Don mentioned in the podcast episode I had with him. He's a freelancer, full-time, and he mentioned that he, from time to time, I think about once every 3 months on average, he has something that he refers to as a hell week.
Yeah.
So this happens usually around when newer versions are shipped and stuff like that. So when there is more work to be done, then it can become really there can be a lot to do, and then sometimes he has these really bad weeks that are full of work where he has to work for many hours and can't focus so much on his social life. But those are usually just short phases, and then he has phases where the work is more relaxed, where he has more work-life balance. So from what you say, it sounds like there are these phases in your work as well, where you have weeks where there's more to do, and then weeks or months where there is a bit more relaxed, where it's a bit more relaxed.
I think that's exactly right. And I think there's one other layer in a tech company which probably doesn't exist in the freelance world, which is on call. So pretty much everyone at Facebook, if you're an engineer, or pretty much any tech company, there's some sort of on call cadence where, if you're on a team of 5 or 6 people, every 5 or 6 weeks you're going to be on call. And then of course I think during that on call week, the idea is that you are essentially the first line of defense for any kind of question or issue that comes up. And so you have to prepare to be a little bit more busy during that week. So I think that's probably something that only happens in a medium or large tech company compared to, in freelancing, you probably don't have that.